Good afternoon, good early evening to everyone. It is Sunday, is it May the 24th? Yes, May the 24th. I don't even know what day it is anymore. It is Sunday, May the 24th, 2020. It is currently 5:01 p.m. Central Time. That means in less than 1 hour, I'm to be on the air again for the Sunday evening service here at Victory Baptist Church. But if you've been paying attention, I've been on the air off and on all afternoon. And, I hope you're ready. I hope you're ready. Okay. I know you're about to be very uncomfortable. I know you are, but yeah, I need you to sit down. Okay. Okay. Sir, ma'am, I need you to sit down. Okay. I need you to sit down. I know look, I'm nervous too. It's going to be uncomfortable for me too, but it's time. It's time we had the talk. Yes. Look, I know. Oh, don't roll your eyes at me. Don't sigh. I know, but we have to have the talk. I think you're old enough now. I think you're old enough to have the talk. I know. Okay. Yeah. You can tell that I'm nervous. I know, but we have to talk about this at some point, and it's time. It's time. So sit down. We're going to have the talk. Now, if you've looked at the title of this podcast episode, you know what talk I'm referring to. Yes, we're going to be talking about sex, okay? We're going to be talking about it. We're going to talk about sex education. We're going to talk about it in the public schools, and we're going to be talking about it. So this may be the time, if you have smaller children, to move them aside. We're going to talk about some things. I don't want to put you in an awkward position because you may not be ready to have that talk with them, all right? So if you need to, move them aside, but I want you to know that we're getting ready to have that talk, and hopefully you will listen, all right? So I'm going to give you a second, pause, put on headphones, whatever you need to do, okay? Here we go. Now, I don't have a lot of time, and I tried to do this broadcast earlier. I tried to have this talk with you earlier, and you pulled the plug, and everything crashed, and I lost that discussion. So we have to do this again. So just because you don't want to hear it doesn't mean you just walk away. You've got to sit down. You've got to listen, all right? Now, here's what I want us to do. We're going to talk about sex education. We're going to talk about it in the public school, but I want us to approach this from kind of a very different way. And listen, I know this is going to be controversial because I'm going to make statements that's going to make some parents mad, that's going to make some Christians mad, because whenever I discuss things like this, I always try to see it from a lot of different perspectives, and I ask questions, and I really challenge a lot of times the way Christians approach things, which usually makes Christians mad at me. Christians are the ones who always get mad at me. Rarely is it lost people. It's always Christians who get mad at me. So please at least hear me out, and then you can email me your thoughts and your questions, and we can talk about it maybe in another episode when I can go into, I can spend more time, all right? But let's try to consider this. The first thing I want you to do when we talk about sex education, and I know you may already have your views about sex education in the public school system, but just let me build this up the way I want to, because I think there's an approach we need to take, all right? So just stay with me here. You ready? Here we go. When it comes to sex education, I want you to think back to when you were young. When did you learn about, did you have a class where sex education was taught in the public school system? Did you? What did you learn? Did you already know everything they told you? Right? Was this already old news? And if it was already old news, where did you hear it? Did your parents talk to you about it before school, before the school did, or did the school talk about it before your parents? Did you hear about it and start learning about it because of friends, because of movies, because of a magazine? Something else gave you your first introduction to, quote unquote, this world of sexual relations before anyone formally talked to you about it or taught you. What happened to you when you were young? How do you remember it? How do you perceive it? And let me ask you this. So first, just try to think about how it happened for you. Now, for me, I do not I don't remember the subject of sex coming up in the public school system from kindergarten to 8th grade. And then somewhere in high school, it was discussed. It was. I don't remember anything about it. I think it was a football coach. He kind of made light of the whole thing. Wasn't very helpful. Not much really was discussed about it. Not much. I think one time abortion came up. And and it was somewhat controversial, but there wasn't really, I don't remember much about it. It was pretty insignificant in my life. And by the time they started talking about it, I'd already understood it and had been exposed to the concept in a countless many ways, movies, magazine, all kinds of other ways. They didn't really provide me any helpful information. And to be honest, when I look back, I'm kind of very frustrated of the things they did not talk about. All right, and let me just give you some things that I felt was missing, and maybe you don't, or maybe you do, but you just hear me out. So when I look back at my own, I already had learned about it, but I didn't learn about it from my parents. My parents never gave me the talk. Okay, I learned about it in a countless other ways. I won't go into all the ways because that would probably be very uncomfortable. But yes, that was I didn't get the talk. I picked it up from a lot of different sources, and then the school mentioned it, and they did very little. What's weird is I remember more discussion about sex, more discussion about quote-unquote sex education, sexuality, not just morality, but sexuality and a lot of things, in a Lutheran Sunday school classroom for teenagers. Yeah, that's kind of weird. They were doing a whole thing like you wouldn't expect it to be there. So it was in a church, and they didn't just go at it from a moral perspective. They just went at it very the biology, like it was very awkward and weird. So that's kind of interesting. Why I can't, and it'd be interesting to know why, but okay, it gets into a whole different discussion. So for me, the public school system didn't do much for me. They didn't help me. And if I look back, there are some things I wish they would have discussed. All right. I wish they would have discussed alcohol and sexuality. Hey, especially to the females in class. Hey, females. You go to a party, you get drunk, you may end up, participating in some kind of sexual activity that you're later going to regret, and you're going to be filled with shame and guilt because alcohol lowers your inhibitions and puts you at a very vulnerable state. Please, 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 please be careful. And then I wish with that they would have went strong at the men, the boys in the class going, hey, when a girl is drunk, that does not equal consent. That is wrong. I wish they would have driven that point home. Now you're like, well, it was high school. People are supposed to be drinking. Okay, what school did you go to? Everyone was drinking in high school, okay? Everyone was going to parties and getting drunk. Everyone had a keg somewhere. Everyone knew how to get alcohol, okay? Give me a break, okay? So, but they didn't really, they should have, and that isn't even looking at it from a morality standpoint, just from a legal standpoint, from a respect standpoint, from trying to protect girls and trying to protect and trying to teach guys responsibility. Because it was common that you would, young girls would come crying and tell them something happened at a party. They were drunk and they got taken advantage of. That is horrible. And guys, in many cases, would try to get the girls drunk, would try to get them drunk, knowing they could take advantage of them. This was like common discussions in high school. That's evil. The school should have stepped up and said something about that. And parents should have taught the boys about responsibility and what is consent and what isn't consent. I think a lot of the problems we've seen in the culture with the Me Too movement exposing some of this is sometimes men don't understand those concepts. And that is a negative thing. All right. And people are like, oh, you're turning into social justice and you sound like a liberal. No, I'm sounding like that I had 2 daughters. Right. No, I don't like the idea of guys trying to get them in a vulnerable state so they can take advantage of them. That's disgusting and vile. And I was at a party. Where a girl who I had a big crush on got serious drunk, came on to me. And I was like, no, this can't happen this way. And then I took her back to my sister's room to help her because, it was like 2 a.m. to go to bed. And then I got ready to leave and there were guys lining up in the hallway. Okay, I don't know how much more. And I had to literally get my father's gun and say no because they were going to take advantage of it. That's messed up. And that's little small town Texas activity. That's not big city, something. No, these are just depravity. And so I wish some things would have really been done to talk about those kinds of things. So I think some things were not discussed that needed to be discussed, but I don't remember really anything about the conversation. It had to be very plain and vanilla. So what was your experience with sexual education? And what do you wish you would have been told? What do you wish you would have been told? Right? Because sometimes I think this is what happens when it comes to parents and sex education, when it comes to kids, this is what we see. We want our kids just to know, don't do it, abstain, abstain, abstain. But we have to look at sex education as more than just teaching them morality, but teaching them a lot of things about sex itself, relationships, lots of things. I think sometimes Christian parents don't give a healthy understanding of sexuality to young people. They don't give a healthy understanding. I think young people grow up with a sense of shame, guilt, dirty, and that's not good. Now, yes, we want to teach Christian morality, and we want to help them when they do fall short of the Christian morality and sexuality, that there is some kind of hope and they can be forgiven. It's almost like sometimes this is how Christian kids are raised. I can commit a lot of sin, but if I commit a sexual sin, I'm done, I'm finished, and I will be branded. And that is true even and for a Christian adults. You can commit all kinds of sin and nobody cares. You can show pride, you can show arrogance, you can gossip, you can slander, you can lie, you can show a lack of love for your neighbor, you can do a million things, but if it's a sexual sin, and I think sometimes, wait, what is it? Is it something with Christians and sexuality? Do we have a different perspective? So I just want you to think about what your encounter with sexual education was and what you felt was missing. All right. And then number 3, I kind of alluded to it. Do you think Christians' perspective on sexuality is healthy? Now, again, there is morality. Please understand, there is morality in regards to sex, and then there's an understanding of sexuality, right? Morality just says this is when you can, this is who you can with, this is when you cannot, and this is who you cannot with, right? It's very black and white. Okay, this is when you can have sex. Nope, you can't have it you can't have it then, you can't have it with that person, and you can't have it that way, right? Like it's very black and white. But that's not sex education. Sex education is not just morality. Sex education has to go beyond that. And I think sometimes Christians have a very limited view in how it should be done. Now, so you got all of that, right? What was your experience? What do you feel was missing? And how do you feel about Christians' view of sexuality and sex education? Now, here comes the next question. You ready? The public school. Do you believe they should be involved in sex education? Now, this is a tough question, right? Because some parents would say, absolutely not. It's my job. And I would say, amen. It is your job. I do agree. But wait a minute. There's some kids, parents are never going to teach them. Some kids are so raised in a broken home. Who's going to teach them? Who's going to help them? Who's going to teach them? There's even some parents who are great parents who never really have a conversation about it in any meaningful way, or the parents give more of a moral lesson and not any actually helping them understand sexuality. Sexuality is this like taboo subject that we can't talk about. We can't talk about. Shh, keep it down, keep it down, keep it down, keep it down. We can't talk about that. It's uncomfortable. I understand it can be uncomfortable, but who's going to talk about it? Who's going to give people a healthy view of it? I wonder how many times that there are major problems in marriage in regards to this subject because it's somewhere down the line we don't have a healthy understanding of it. How poorly is our understanding of it? I think we see sometimes it as just an act. And that's it. And then we just get the morality to it and we think we're done. I think there's more to it than that. So what do you believe the public school should do and shouldn't do? What should they say? What shouldn't they say? Now, this is going to be, now let's remember, it's a public school. You can't expect, and this is where I think Christians mess up so much. Sometimes we expect the public school to teach sexuality that's in line with our understanding of it. Well, you can't expect that. It's a public school. So then what do you do? If your kids go to a public school, what do they do? This deals a lot with Christians being in culture, right? This goes along with those previous discussions that we need to finish. This is kind of an extra. Now it comes to you're a Christian parent, sex education. So what we're going to do is going to listen to a news report that I heard yesterday because sex education is back in the news. Now, I said all of that as fast as I could. I wanted to go into far more detail, but I'm limited in time here. So I want you to hear this. The audio is not good. You're going to have to increase it, but just listen. I will be interrupting here or there, and we'll try not to blow your eardrums when I come back in. All right, here we go. Let's listen. This was on the radio yesterday. Sex education in the public school, and this is coming to you from a quote-unquote Christian perspective. Let's see what you may agree with everything they say, and when I disagree, you may get mad at me, but just try to hear me out. Here we go.
Welcome back to the weekend edition of Washington Watch. I'm David Salkeld. You know, it wasn't that long ago that sex education was an uncomfortable hour or two, exploring human growth and development. Today, it's much more graphic and features popular buzzwords like inclusivity and sex positivity. FRC's Senior Fellow and Director of Human Dignity, Kathy Roos, joins Tony Perkins to talk about how parents can fight back, as well as FRC's new resource called Sex Education in Public Schools, Sexualization of Children, and LGBT Indoctrination. Here's Tony Perkins.
Coronavirus has brought education back home for many families. And one of the things they've discovered is what their kids have been taught. And a new publication documents how education has given way to indoctrination. And joining me now to talk about...
Okay. Now, when they say that education has given way to indoctrination, I have to kind of stop there and go, wait a minute. So the public school, they've moved from education to indoctrination, but if a Christian school is teaching on sexuality, did they move past education to indoctrination? What counts as education for sex and what counts as indoctrination for sex? In other words, if I'm teaching in a Christian school and I teach Christian morality about sexuality, is that not indoctrination or is that education? Like when you say education is turned into indoctrination, do you mean, it's indoctrination because they're teaching something we don't like? What is the difference between education and indoctrination? All right, now we could, let me try this. I think I still have the window open. I may not, I may have to go back and look. Let me go here. Let me look. I'm going to do education definition. All right, here's the definition for education. Education is defined as the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, especially at a school or university. So what they're saying is that education is turned into indoctrination. So there's education. Now let's look at the word indoctrination. What is the difference? Let's look. Indoctrination definition. Indoctrination is the process of teaching a person or group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. All right? Now, I want you to hear that. A Christian program talking about the difference between education and indoctrination. Education, so here's how education is supposed to work. The process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, especially at school or university, but you're supposed to be training them to question, to challenge, to struggle. That's educating is saying, hey, listen to this, but do so with critical thinking skills. Challenge it, question it, research it, try to figure out what truth is versus error. That's education. But indoctrination is simply the process of teaching a person or a group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. So would a Christian want a sex education? Remember, a lot of Christians want abstinence only. Do you want abstinence only taught, but taught so, listen, not as indoctrination? Hey guys, you should just accept abstinence in an uncritical way, or should you tell kids, hey, here's this idea of abstinence, but you should question it, you should challenge it, you should research it. Now, see, I think Christians play games. When it's something we don't like, indoctrination. When we do it, it's education. Okay, No. Oh, are you sure? Are you sure? Because we want the Bible taught like indoctrination. Accept it. We want our views to be taught as accept it uncritically. No, education is they should be able to challenge everything. So in sex, if sex education is taught, don't you have to teach different perspectives and different views? Or no, you want the kids to be indoctrinated with a Christian morality and a Christian understanding of sexuality. And if it's not taught that way, then you want your kids not to be exposed to it. So you want the kids in a public school to only be exposed to education that agrees with your indoctrination. Yeah, I think sometimes Christians play games here. Hey, we're going to talk about sex education. We want you to know the public school, they've given up education. They've moved to indoctrination. Why? Because they're not teaching it the way we want. All right, yeah, come on. We got to be fair here. All right. Let's go. Let's continue.
This is FRC Senior Fellow and Director of the Center for Human Dignity, Kathy Roos. Kathy, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Tony. I'm glad to be with you.
And you have a new publication, and it's all about this issue of sex education. This is not what those of us who were in school, 30 years ago or so had as sex education.
No, it's changed quite a lot. And there are really two problems that parents have with today's sex education. And one is that it unnecessarily sexualizes children. At younger and younger ages, more and more graphic material, teaching things to kids like how to consent to sex. I mean, it's outrageous. And then the other problem is really the indoctrination, and it's a radical sexual ideology that is being indoctrinated, that kids are being subjected to. And that includes things like transgenderism, born in the wrong body lessons, and all of the LGBT crusade, which has really become the heart of sex ed lessons today. So we have two fronts to fight this on, and actually two battlefields. I'm getting out beyond where I can do metaphors properly here, but because it's not only the sex ed classes, but it's also the policies and what's in the hall rooms and what's on the calendar and what's in history class. So it's spreading beyond sex ed class into sort of the whole environment of the school.
Well, this month, I believe, is called, is it Sex Ed for All Month?
It is.
Where, this is, as you say, permeating education. And let me ask you this question, because as you talk about the sexualizing of our children, it's creating pressure, from my perspective, as I read the reports and see the information. Is this creating pressure for our kids to engage in this behavior because it's just filling their mind with so much stuff?
Well, research is showing just that there have been two major research studies studying basically meta-analyses where they studies about school-based sex ed. One was a couple of years ago and the other one was just recently. And they both found that school-based sex ed programs are failing at a rate of 87%. What does failure mean? It means that they're failing to postpone sexual activity in kids. They're failing to prevent teen pregnancy. And shockingly, Tony, a substantial minority of these programs are actually increasing sexual activity, increasing the number of sex partners, increasing sexual experimentation by kids. So
now, this is interesting. Again, whenever people quote studies, there's always a study to supposedly prove your point. So I'm always suspect, but I just sex education was to postpone sexuality. Is that the goal of sex education? Is sex education's goal? Is it to educate about sexuality, or is it to postpone the engagement in sexuality? Like, what is it supposed to do? And I wonder, like sex education in the public school system had nothing to do with my interest in sexuality, my desire for sexual, it had, I don't understand, it's like, do you have a kid who's like, he comes to school one day, sex ed class, is like, oh, wow, we had sex education. Now I want to have sex. I didn't know this existed until I got this subject. Now, we could ask this. Now, this is a very important question. How young should sex education begin to be taught in the public school system? Now, it seems some school districts want to go younger and younger and younger, but kids are becoming more and more sexualized because, drum roll please, The internet. Yes, they get exposed to pornographic and sexual explicit material at an earlier and earlier and earlier age. So the school's like, so in some cases, if you wait till 8th grade, the kids are going to be laughing at you. You're going to talk to me about sexuality? Well, what do you do? Like, give me a break. 7th grade, give me a break. So when do you do so? When do you do so? Now, parents are like, I don't want my kid. Now, sometimes I think Christian parents are like, I don't want my kid to know about it, but your kids already know about it. Right? Sometimes I think Christian parents are very naive about what their kids are doing. My kids don't do anything like that. And you're like, your kid's the one leading the whole group. What are you talking about? Right? So I think sometimes parents are naive. We don't want to think that. So I just don't know. Does it promote it? I don't know. Does it promote it? Is it supposed to restrain it? Like, I think sometimes Christians want a sexual education. Remember, they supposedly say that what the public school doing is indoctrination. But I think what Christians want indoctrination. Hey, kids, here's this thing called sexuality. You should not engage in it until you're married. Here's the reason you shouldn't engage in it. Unwanted pregnancy, STDs, blah, 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 blah. Not emotionally prepared, all the reasons. Is that not indoctrination? So it's like, again, Christians sometimes they want to control the indoctrination and they don't like it when they don't control. So then don't condemn it for being indoctrination. Just condemn it that it's not your indoctrination. What should be the goal of sex education? What should it be? Do we want the kids to have a healthy understanding of sexuality? Now, we could argue transgenderism and all some of these other issues are definitely deviant from the Christian view of sexuality, but the kids are going to know these things exist. So is it one thing to just say, hey, there are people who practice a lot of different aspects of sexuality. Here are some, and we're not going to make a moral judgment on any because our job is just to educate you about them. How do you want the school to handle it? I don't know. Can the school make any moral judgment? I mean, schools make moral judgments in teaching all the time. They'll teach about slavery. They're going to make a moral judgment that it was wrong. They're going to condemn it, right? I mean, so when do you? It was like sometimes we like when the school teaches morality, and sometimes we don't like when they teach our morality. Thumbs up. When they teach against our morality, thumbs down. Like, I don't know how that works. So, but I think I think Christians just need to have a broader view of sexuality. Has to be more than just morality. It has to be more than that. All right. We want kids to grow up healthy with a healthy view of sexuality so it doesn't create problems later in life. And we also want them not to hurt themselves in the practice of sexuality, right? Or hurt others. So I don't know. I think abstinence should be taught, and there should be some reasons given for it. I don't think you can avoid that subject. It has to at least be discussed as, hey, you don't have to engage in this, and here's some reasons you may want to consider not. But if it's education, you got to give the opposing view. Those who practice it, like, you've got to give both views. If it's education or is it indoctrination? Like, I don't know. So, all right, we got to finish this. Let's go.
Absolutely. What you think would happen is happening.
So the question, Kathy Roos, is why is this being taught?
Well, it is being taught to understand why, you see who, and who are Planned Parenthood, the largest provider, they claim to be, of sex ed in the country, SIECUS, which is the original creator of institutionalized sex ed education, and the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, and others. So these are powerful, wealthy, in some cases international pressure groups that are using sex ed to push really a political agenda. And they're not even they're not even shy about that anymore. They're candid about that. SIECUS, which is the largest sex ed promoter, I think, at least institutionally, has rebranded itself now, and they call themselves Sex Ed for Social Change. So it's not about education anymore. It's about promoting social justice warriors. It's about gender ideology. It's even about eradicating white privilege. That's what we're doing this month in Sex Ed for All month. So it's using kids as pawns. It's indoctrinating them and using sex education as the tool to reach them.
But again, what do you want put in its place? What do you want to put? No, they're using them as pawns, and they're indoctrinating them. Well, there's lots of Christian organizations who want to come in and teach abstinence only. Are they not using them as a tool? Don't they? Doesn't everyone have an agenda when it comes to this? Everyone has an agenda. I agree. I hate that. I wish that we could just get the agendas out of education and we could just educate. I wish, but I don't want to replace one agenda and one indoctrination with another. Like, how do we do this? Now, in the church, we have to teach sexuality, obviously from a biblical perspective. We have to teach. I mean, that's the job. And Christians should teach their parents a sexual understanding, a Christian understanding of sexuality. They have to do that. But again, I think even Christian parents have to go beyond just teaching. Sexuality cannot just be taught as morality. There's more to it than morality. And I think it leads to, again, I think sometimes the moral teaching is so emphasized within Christianity that everyone walks around going, bad, 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 dirty, dirty, bad, shameful. Can't discuss it. Can't talk about it. Shameful, 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 shameful. And of all the sins you could commit, the one that will destroy you the most and the one that will get you thrown out of everything is a sexual sin. Other sins, good to go, not sexual sin. Why do we elevate that to such a level of it's just crazy how we sometimes handle it. And I think that Christians need to rethink how we approach the subject. But, yes, is there an agenda with some of these groups? Absolutely. And let me just throw this out there. And Christians, I'm going to get all kinds of hate mail from Christians, but let me just throw this out there. Now, I believe abortion is murder. Boom. I don't like abortion, wish it would be overthrown, wish it would be done away with. Ultimately, the way you can change abortion is as people become Christians and understand the Christian understanding of life, they will avoid abortions, and hopefully you can eliminate it that way. But that's just through the process of preaching the gospel. Do I want law passed in the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade and get rid of it? That would be wonderful because it's dealing with the murder of human beings. I hate it. But currently, as I'm speaking, it's legal in the United States of America. Now, teaching sex education, should abortion be brought up? Because let's be honest, abortion is used almost as contraception, right? You get pregnant and you don't want the child, you can get an abortion. Should it be brought up? Now, if it's brought up, if it's a part of the study, now if it's education, now this is where I would argue against the other side and their indoctrination, all right? I think Christians want some indoctrination. I think the other side wants indoctrination. But I think this, if you're going to teach abortion fairly, you have to teach, right? Here is the development of a child, and you've got to teach it correctly. You need to let the kids see, a sonogram of the child, an ultrasound. You got to let them see the child inside the womb and what it looks like. You got to let them understand exactly what takes place in an abortion. You got to understand child development and exactly what is going on with the child at each stage and when an abortion typically occurs and what you're actually getting rid of. I think you have to be, if you're going to educate, you've got to give all of those facts. If you don't give all of those facts and let the children see all the relevant information, now you're indoctrinating. And I think when it comes to abortion, I don't know, does it even need to be a part of sex education? I mean, does the public school even need to be in the business of this? I don't know, because some kids are not going to get it anywhere else. Now, you wish in the perfect world, parents would sit their children down, educate them carefully, correctly in regards to sexuality. But just think of some of the wacky things parents teach their kids, and then you meet those kids as they're adults, and you're like, wait, what do you think? Wait, where did you hear that? Well, my mom and dad told me. Well, oh my goodness. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes racism is taught by parents. So again, but like, what do we do here? Like, what do we do? This has raised lots of questions. Now, again, I believe there's an agenda, but I think everyone has their agenda. All right, let's try to finish this up.
And it's all behind parents' backs. Right. Parents are the enemies.
And the parents don't know about it, and they don't want the parents to know about it. But when you lead children down.
Now, I got to jump in there. That's one thing I do not like about the public school system. That is one thing I do not like about the public school system. And in fact, I homeschooled my children, all right? So I'm not here trying to defend the public school system in any way, shape, or form. I hate the public school system. I hate it, despise it. can't stand it. Okay. I mean, man, I can't stand it. Wasn't that Singing in the Rain? Okay. I think that was Singing in the Rain. I can't stand it. But it was kind of like with a supposed fake Boston accent. Okay. But you get the idea. All right. So, I hate the public school system. My entire experience in the public school system was horrific, was horrible. I consider it basically, suffering in a way that I don't ever want to. I wish I could go to counseling and have the memory of my education, my 4 years, especially my 4 years of high school, removed from my brain as if it never happened. Literally. And you think I'm exact. That's not hyperbole. That's how much I despised everything about it. I hate the whole conform or be cast out, the peer pressure, the bullying, the whole, you got to follow what the little traditions of the school. And if you don't follow it, like, oh man, just everything about it is about sheep and conformity. It's not about education. I hate it. All right. But one of the things I do hate about the public school system is they do have this mentality. Hey, when you drop that kid off, they belong to us. We decide, and you're out of the loop. No, if you're going to be, I think whenever especially anything dealing with sexuality is going to be taught, the parent should be given an advance notice. It's coming here. So the parent has every opportunity to start teaching and going ahead and having the talk prior to. The parent should be informed prior to and be told exactly what's going to be taught. Now, to be fair, sometimes the school will send that information to parents, and parents don't care to read it or care to be informed. All right. Sometimes your kid will get a required reading list of books, and then the kids read the books, and then the parent finds out what's in the book, and then they go crazy. Why weren't you reading the book with your kid? Why? Hey, what book do you have to read this semester? Okay, I'll read it with you, and we'll talk about it. Oh no. Parents can't do that because that'd be parenting, wouldn't it? Can't read the book with the kid because, oh no, you may have to read a book. Now that's when parents aren't doing their jobs. You want to read the book because then we'll find out, oh, I can't believe that was in that book. Well, why haven't you taught your kids how to analyze literature and deal with it, right? You should, okay, they're going to be teaching sex education. Okay, well, let's talk about it. Right? Like have the discussion where you can, and then say, what you're learning, bring home so we can discuss it. It may not be the most comfortable subject, but we need to talk about it because you need to have a healthy understanding of this subject. You have a responsibility. Some parents don't want the responsibility, but I do not like that sometimes these schools do this stuff like in the lowdown. We're going to keep it on the lowdown and keep it secret. That's messed up. And parents need to be involved in what their kids are learning. I know it's work, but you got to be involved. You have to know. It's your responsibility. They're your responsibility. They're not the public school's responsibility. They're yours.
On this path of early sexual exposure and engagement, this sows moral chaos and confusion into their lives, and of course makes it easier for this agenda of the left to be advanced in society.
Yeah, it really is about getting children off balance, so much so that they can't even rely on reality in these lessons. One of the most sinister developments, of course, is this transgender ideology where children are taught that they could be born in the wrong body. Talk about getting a child off balance.
Planting seeds of doubt.
Absolutely. So they have no firm ground to stand on, and they're much more easily to manipulate then.
Now, when the public school system, they do teach something about sex education, listen, now this is they have to be teaching facts. Okay, if they're going to start getting into the transgender and maybe you were born in the wrong body and maybe you're not really a boy, you're actually a girl. Okay, now come on. No, they were born a boy and they're a boy, okay? They're genetically a boy. Like if they start denying reality and they start teaching things that are just scientifically fraudulent and not right and absolutely proven to be wrong, that's when that's going too far. And I completely agree. Getting into, hey, you could be born in a wrong body. That's not educating. That's now, that's suggesting. That's trying to direct. And that's not education. Okay. And so, yeah, parents do need to be aware. But parents do need to be aware about what's going on in the public school system when this is happening. So there's what I'm challenging a lot of the Christian perspective here, but they are bringing up information that all parents need to be aware of what's going on and whatever public school your child may be attending.
And it also encourage them not to talk to their parents?
Yes. I mean, some of the lessons, and over the research I've done for this pamphlet, the lessons are so manipulative. They use techniques where I used to think, but now I thought, and they have the children kind of use this language, which is used in psychological manipulation. They require certain language changes on the part of kids, which we know, is a way to manipulate people, manipulating the language that they're allowed to use. There's so much that's being done that parents have no idea about, which is one of the reasons why we needed to bring all this together in a pamphlet. And it shows what's happening all across the country. It's not just New York. It's not just California.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
We don't have the time to go into all of this, but I want people to know about this new publication, Sex Education in Public Schools, Sexualization of Children and LGBT Indoctrination. This is not only telling what the problem is, but also gives parents action steps.
Absolutely. Yes, we couldn't just tell the bad news. And there are things parents can do and must do. Some of them might be counterintuitive, so parents really need to look at this new resource that we have, because we do, as parents, we are in the front lines. And we need to exercise the power that we have to protect children.
And in this publication, you talk about some of the tools that parents don't know that they have, that they actually do have, that they can utilize to protect their children.
Right. And my favorite one is something that we've developed here at Family Research Council, which is, we're calling it the universal opt-out. You don't have to wait for the school to provide you with a form to sign to say, I don't want my child exposed to these things. You can proactively fill out this letter, send it into your school every year, and that tells the school that you do not consent to your child being exposed to any of these things wherever they crop up. School assemblies, history class, doesn't matter.
It's time for mama bears to step forward and protect those baby cubs. Kathy Roos, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, Tony.
You can find out more.
All right. We'll have to end it there because we're running out of time and I got to be on the air for church here shortly. But you can opt your kid out. But if there's a certain age that if you're opting them out, don't think they're going to not hear the information. The kids are going to be talking about it. They're still going to be getting it. So I don't like opting out. I like my kids being exposed and then talking about it and go, okay, what was their perspective? So what do you think they were trying to say here? All right, they're making this argument. What do you think they were trying to say here? And I know that's hard work. And if you're already sending the kid to the public school and then you got to come home and then you got to try to re-educate them, then you're like, well, why are they going to the public school? Exactly. Okay, that's why you should homeschool them, all right? But if you are homeschooling them, you've got to ensure that if you're homeschooling them and if you're going to opt them out where they don't hear about it in the public school, are you ensuring that you're giving them a holistic, full understanding of sexuality and not just teaching morality as a disguise of sex education? Sex education, and all I'm going to do is give them a morality about it. You've got to go more into it than that. I think there's more to, I think so. And again, go back. What were you taught? What do you wish was taught? What do you wish was taught? Where do you think the public school should come in? And what do you think Christian parents, what do you think Christians need to do in their understanding of sexuality? Do you think Christians, sometimes we hurt and a healthy understanding of sexuality? Do you think Christianity actually hurts it and gives people a wrong understanding of sexuality? Those are some issues that you need to think about. I know I had to go quick through this and I apologize. Hopefully this was beneficial. If you do not know, I tried to teach this earlier. I got about 30 minutes into it and my studio that, I broadcast live from the software froze up and that was the end of that. So I had to go all over the internet and try to delete that episode because it was only partial. This one I had to kind of go through it kind of a different perspective, or not really a different perspective, but at a different speed and try to do a lot of summarizing. We'll see if this generates lots of arguing and lots of debate in the email. If it does, I'll do my best to try to clarify any position. Please understand that I had to be quick. I couldn't be as thorough as I wanted. So, please don't take anything I said out of context and try to ask for clarification. Don't just condemn, all right? newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. I've got 15 minutes before I have to be on the air, so I'm going to stop right now. All right, thanks. God bless, and let's think about this biblically, carefully, logically, because I think Christians really need to kind of consider this whole subject and maybe how we can handle it differently, better, and we do need to be aware of what's going on in the public education system when it comes to sexuality. There is no doubt there is clearly a movement in some schools for kind of a pro-LGBTQ transgender ideology. And and again, just opting your kids out, that ideology is all over culture. You got to do more than opting out. You got to teach them to engage, analyze, and come to good conclusions. That is the part of the educational system, being exposed to things that they may not agree with, not just exposing them to what you want. They've got to learn how to process information and struggle with it and think about it and realize they live in a world that doesn't always believe the way they believe or the way you want them to believe. They live in a big, scary world, and they're going to get hit with all of these ideas no matter how much you try to hide them from. So equip them to deal with it, not just hide them from it. That's just a thought. All right, there you go. I'll be back on the air shortly. God bless.